iṣẹ́ iṣẹ́ ìyẹn kì í ṣe tiwọn eré 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 ṣáni tiwọn dodo àti ráìsì kò gbọ́dọ̀ kọjá wọn jẹun 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 wọn kò tó roboto.
Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to another session with the Out of the Box series. We're going to be inviting our guest in shortly after I do a little bit of intro into what we're going to be discussing today. It's going to be really informative and educative. We're planning and hoping that you'll be able to grab as much as possible. Hello, Dio Israel, thank you for joining. Hello, Paper Crafts by Anne, thank you for joining. It's been a while. Good to see you. Okay, so I'm going to just dive right into it and call her in. She is somebody who has done quite a bit in the education sector, and she has impacted a lot of lives in the process. If you listen to the music in the background, it's actually corners on the essence of education and why it is that it is important. Although that song was sort of designed to advocate for farming, it's needless to say that we need education not only for farming but for leadership and every area and aspect of our life, because education brings in knowledge, it brings in entitlement, it gives a sense of understanding, and also you know, they said the song says Iwe kiko laisi oko laisi ada, you know, but also Iwe kiko helps to be able to discover yourself, to know yourself, know your worth, and also understand the direction of where you're going. So without any further ado, let me invite our guest for today. So, good evening, Mrs. Folawe Omikunle. Nice to have you on board. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, it's better now. It's better. It's better. Welcome on board.
Thank you.
So I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Folawe Omikunle, who is in the capacity of the CEO for Teach for Nigeria, an NGO that pushes the values for education and for teaching as well. We're going to be discussing a little bit about that as we continue. I'll take you back into time. I had an interview with Banky W, and we were discussing some of the things that he was into, some of the values and ideals that he was pushing, or that he is pushing for the youth demographic. And Teach for Nigeria happens to be one of the platforms that he mentioned on that day. And I got very curious and I started to make my research. And I have found a lot of profound and prolific milestones with Teach for Nigeria. But I'm going to do a quick intro so that our guests can know who you are, understand your capacity, and also understand the antecedents that you have that you have thus far. So you graduated from Babcock University and you had a master's degree. Well, you graduated with international law and diplomacy. Right. And you had a master's degree at the Diplomatic Academy of London. And then you took up an appointment as a school administrator at Cradle Academy, a Montessori preschool in Lagos. And then you had an experience with an orphaned child. And that kind of spurred your interest and your passion for teaching and education. And so you went on to join the Association of Private Educators in Nigeria, APEN. And thereafter, you participated in a Harvard Graduate School of Education program called the Leading Change Through Education Systems. So I see that, you know, the trajectory is get towards addressing change from a leadership perspective, basically for reorientation. So you want to cause a change in the mindset, in perceptions and expression in that sector, in the education sector. Now, my question is, with that kind of movement, what has the experience been like? And what sort of learnings have you gotten? Especially, let's start with the orphaned child. What happened? What created the mind shift with the orphaned child?
Thank you so much, Titi, and I'm really excited to be here. And so I will do it because you've sort of talked about it. So I'll try and summarize from where I was working as school administrator in a school in Lekki. And that experience for me, I didn't start off thinking I would end up in a school. I really wanted to become a diplomat. And I'd applied to join the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that didn't happen, that didn't work. And so for me, I had no interest because all my peers, my colleagues were going on to work at the bank or work with the telco at that point. But for me, I wanted to work in the school. So I started working in a school as a school administrator. I had no experience, but the director believed in me and just said, I like the freshness to you. And I like that you're going to bring fresh ideas. So, you know, come here and come and lead. That was my first experience being thrown in a leadership role. And this is a school in a highbrow area, in a highbrow community. But one day, this little girl called Udo Amaka was enrolled at that school. Now, Udo Amaka was about 4 years old. When she came to the school, she couldn't speak a word of English. Like, I remember one of the meetings that the teachers had, one of the meetings we had, and it was like, why would the director of the school allow for this girl to be enrolled? Like, in comparison to the children in that school, it was like day and night. And I remember that, you know, we would fill complaint forms because Udo Amaka would, you know, bite other kids, like she would throw tantrums and what have you. But something happened with Udo Amaka within 6 months, and her life literally transformed. Like, it changed. It was like a 360-degree turnaround. At that point, I didn't define it as whether it was equality or whether it was what opportunity. Something was just happening that was leaving an impression within me. And I used to live in Lukweju. So when I'm driving from Lekki back home to Lukweju and I see the kids on the street begging for alms, trying to clean my windscreen, I will just imagine them in my school. You know, I would imagine them in Udo Amaka's shoes. And for me, it was, are you saying that if we gave these children an opportunity and if we changed the environment, you know, and gave them access to the same sort of education that Udo Amaka was having, you know, their lives would equally transform? And so at that point, it just wasn't enough for me anymore to remain in that school, working as a school administrator, serving not more than 100 students. I wanted to do more. I wanted to reach as many more Udo Amakas as possible. And that's how, you know, that came about. Udo Amaka was adopted by a parent whose children had relocated from Nigeria, and she wanted to have a child in the home. And so Udo Amaka's, the guardian had gone and adopted Udo Amaka from southeastern Nigeria. I'm not quite sure what state she had come from. And that was how I met Udo Amaka. And literally that changed the trajectory of my life.
Okay, so that's a very, very interesting story. As a matter of fact, I even have one story that is quite close to that. You know, it's profound how it is that Udo Amaka had that sort of opportunity. Has Udo Amaka progressed from there? Has
Oh
she?
yeah. So from what I heard, like before, so after Uduamaka, I went on and started working at APEN from the school. And this was
Yes.
years ago. But then as at the point that I was there, she was topping, so she was at least top 5, in the school, even before I left. And I definitely need to
Wow.
follow up on her progress. But from what I've
Yeah.
gathered, she's doing very well. And it's just
Yes.
it's the point, it's the fact that every child can learn, so long as we set
Yes.
expectations, high expectations for children, and we have the right teacher who is
Yes.
committed, who is passionate, they'll be able to help that
Yes.
child to fulfill their potential. And one of my biggest inspiration is Maria Montessori. And she believed that every child has potential, and our role is to help nurture and help that child unleash and fulfill their God-given potential.
Ogurombi Jade says every child can learn, every child can success, with notwithstanding the behavioral or academic deficits. That is it. That's exactly the message that you're trying to pass out there. Okay, so now let's start with the fundamentals, and I'd like to ask, why do you think that the strategy for change should be addressed fundamentally from the mindset? Why? You've talked about the children that you see on the roads. You've talked about imagining those children in the spaces that Oduamaka grew up, and them having that opportunity. So that's clearly an action. That's an action to take. But why are you addressing this issue from the perspective of the mindset?
Thank you, Titi. So I will share, maybe just to give a bit of background as to what Teach for Nigeria does and why we do what we do. So when you look at the challenge is that there are millions of children who just don't have the opportunity, and who don't have the they don't have the opportunity, they don't have they don't have the environment, they don't have the support needed for them to attain quality education, needed for them to attain an education that would allow for them to fulfill their potential, or allow for them to shape the lives that they want for themselves. And there are too many of those children. And the reason for why that is happening is so complex, and it's so systemic that there's not one single solution to it. Like, for example, if we decided today that, we'll throw billions of naira to education. Like, Titi, that is not going to fix it for all of the children, right? Because beyond education, like there's issues that go outside the school system. There are issues, that go into policy. There are issues around leadership. There are issues around even the teachers that are teaching in the school. So it's such a complex issue that to really solve it, we need people who have the right mindset. We need people who have the leadership experience and leadership skills. We need people who have the understanding of what the issues are. And I'll give you an example, just so that this doesn't sound theoretical. I was having a conversation with someone, and this was with regards like issues with like girl child in northern Nigeria. And, a lot of times everybody's like, oh, we need to get more girls to go to school, which is true. And then they're like, oh, yes, let's invest funding, let's make education free. Let's give them scholarship and what have you. I was having a conversation with somebody who does work in Northeast Nigeria. They said, do you know that girls do not attend school because, they don't, for example, if the teacher in the classroom is a male teacher, parents are discouraged to send their girl child to school. Another reason is because if the sanitary facility is one that is unisex, or if it's broken down, it's just one toilet that everyone is sharing, parents are discouraged to send their kids to school. And there's the issue of early marriage. So when you look at all of those issues, these are issues that, yes, I mean, whoever is hiring teachers definitely has to be thinking, okay, how can we get more female teachers because of this, cultural issue, religious issue. Another person who is like dealing with ensuring that the infrastructure is built right needs to be thinking, okay, we need to ensure that there is female toilet, there is male toilet. But there are all of these issues that go beyond whether it's the teachers, whether it's the school head, because it's like all of these other factors outside that is beyond their control, right? But then the fact is that we need to educate all our girls. But then there are all these issues that are beyond, like that, in the hands of different people that needs to work together to ensure that, that the girl child can be educated. So how do we build a system where we have the, leaders who understand these issues, who have and who have the power, the influence, who have the ideas, the solutions to really solve them. And that's why, the mindset is just so important. The leadership quality and the leadership ability to actually identify these issues and say, you know what, okay, actually, when we're thinking about recruiting teachers, for specific regions, maybe we need to ensure that, more female teachers are hired, right? They're making informed decisions because they understand what the fundamental issues are. And Titi, a lot of people say, oh, so why does Teach for Nigeria recruit non-education graduates? The truth of the matter is, for us to solve this sort of complex problem, we need people at every level, every sector that exists in government, in society, and what have you. Like, when you think about some of the issues with, like, recruiting the female teachers, or you think about issues like, okay, the people who are designing the school structure, designing certain things, like, these are people who are not necessarily education degree holders, like, but they're people who, you have architects there who are probably working with the Ministry of Works or working with the department affiliated with, like, doing. So the idea is, how can we get to a point where we have a critical mass of people who have the mindset, who have the attitude, and who are committed enough and passionate enough to make these decisions to ensure that we are able to support our children to have the education that they need and that they deserve.
Okay, so what you're saying essentially is that for Teach for Nigeria, you must have a whole bouquet of teachers, allow me to use that word, who understand the nuance, who would understand the nuance and the culture for each segment, for each area, right? And that's how you can deploy. I mean, I'd like to understand the model. What's the model of your expressions at Teach for Nigeria?
Okay, so the model approach, like the model of our program, Titi.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The model,
okay,
yeah, because it sounds like a real, it's like a whole complete 360-degree program, but it has to be segmented and strategic with each zone and which location and the area. So how does that work?
So I'll just So Teach for Nigeria is focused on addressing educational inequity. We're working towards getting to a day where every child in this country has access to quality education. I mean, that's an ambitious task, but we're doing it through a very unique approach where we recruit fresh graduates, young professionals, existing teachers. We recruit all this dynamic and diverse group of outstanding individuals. Like what we're working towards, how do we channel the energy of our most brilliant and most outstanding, promising leaders into education and into the education ecosystem to address all of these challenges. And we start with a 2-year fellowship program that starts with teaching as a full-time teacher for 2 years.
Okay.
And the idea of doing that is for these individuals, these outstanding leaders, to get the understanding, to get the insight, to get the experience, of what the fundamental issues are. So what happens in the first 2 years is you're focused on ensuring that you improve learning outcomes for the kids that you're responsible for. You help improve mindset, attitudes of these children. You transform you literally put them on a different path from being with them for 2 years full time. And then during the 2-year program, you're coached, you're trained, and before you're deployed to teach, you're trained. You go through an intensive training program, and then you're deployed in the school. You're trained, you're supported, you're coached through the entire experience. And while you're on the program, you're also supported to identify issues. So while you're there, you start to identify. So maybe just to give an example, what some of our fellows who were on our 2017 program, they started to notice a pattern where, again, I'm going to use a girl child example, where girls were missing out of school because they were on their menstrual period. And so these girls just wouldn't show up in school. And the ones who showed up in school during their period, a lot of them didn't have access to sanitary towels or sanitary pads. And they would sit in the back of the classroom. They're stained, and literally they would withdraw. And they would wait for everyone to close from school before leaving. Now, and they saw
Wow.
that as an issue because, you know, throughout the month, the girl is missing school, you know, say for 4 days or 5 days, or she's just not engaging with lessons as she should. And they were having like conversations in their different groups, and they saw that this was a pattern. And these were schools in Ogun State. So in Southwest Nigeria here, even we're dealing
Wow.
with, you know, we're seeing this.
Wow.
And these guys came together and they set up an initiative that is now sensitizing girls. Like they're talking to existing teachers who are saying, actually, we're oblivious to this issue. We never even really paid attention to it. Like, you know, but obviously because of the training, you know, our fellows and our participants, their eyes are like, you know, wired to pick things like that and to see things like that. And so they're bringing all of these guys together, bringing community members together and asking them, you know, when you were going through puberty or when you were going through your cycle, like, how do you manage? And so they're learning from getting grandparents, getting existing teachers and nurses to talk to the girls, you know, about what is happening with their body and developmental stages. And what they've also done in addition to that is to install sanitary banks in schools, so that girls could, you know, because it was an issue, right? And so as part of the fellowship of the 2-year teaching experience, you have to identify a challenge, and then you have to come up with a solution that you must implement and that also must be sustainable. There's another alumnus now. His name is Kayode, and Kayode actually had an offer to join one of the telcos before he took the decision to join Teach for Nigeria. So, like, this is not a program where people join only just because they don't have a job. People who join are joining because they want to make a difference and they want to impact lives. And so Kayode, you know, turned down the offer at the telco and joined Teach for Nigeria. And I remember, you know, his conversation, you know, his decision about like whether he was making the right decision or not, and the confusion about that. And when he came into the program, you know, he went through it. He taught in a school in Ogun State. And Kayode decided to engage with teachers. And he said he met teachers who before then, you know, everybody talks about, oh, teachers, they're not qualified, they're not this. But he met teachers who weren't trained in years. There were teachers who had been trained in 10, 15, 17 years. They had no refresher. Nothing had been done. And Kayode decided that he wanted to support teachers. Now he's launched a program called School Linker. And School Linker trains teachers online, in person. And he wants to get to as many public school teachers in service as possible. And those are some of the opportunities. So just imagine the ecosystem at some point, you know, overwhelmed with solutions from social entrepreneurs, with people who are working at policy level, people who are working at school system level, who are now leading school systems, principals who are introducing all sorts of innovation. Like, that's what we're working towards. Because the truth of the matter, Titi, I found some very transformative teachers. I found innovative teachers, but I've also found these teachers crippled because they haven't had supportive and even transformative head teachers. So we need to get to a point where the entire system, you know, has the right leadership, has the right mindset and attitude to allow for the child, because at the end of the day, it's about that child, to allow for that child to thrive. And that's what we're working towards.
Okay, so because I've got a lot of questions, and there's it's so diverse, and it comes out in different forms. Now, there's the issue of addressing the teachers and how to equip or how to give them the enabling environment to be able to work and do what they need to do. There's a side of the children where we need to help them understand the essence and the need for them to be educated. There's also the parents that need to be able to enforce or at least motivate the children against all odds, you know, for them to be educated or for them to understand what knowledge can do for them, you know. And then, of course, the society as a whole, providing that policy for the government. So first and foremost, you know, without having to keep knocking this in, we definitely have a decline and there's a total structural breakdown somewhere, you know. But let me understand, help me to push this thought in. When we were faced, when the missionaries were coming into Nigeria, they had their tools, they had their strategies. They knew how they wanted to be able to get into the hearts of people, whether through functions or emotions or the spiritual. And everything was cascaded with the vision of establishing their presence and also making us to do what they wanted to do. Okay. And so they introduced knowledge, they introduced education. Right. Now, if we have to look inwards and develop a system such that it is adaptable to our culture, adaptable to our needs, is there any reason why we don't have to wait till we have the formal structure of the education for knowledge? Because, you know, knowledge is beyond just the maths and the English. But like you said, if we're addressing the mindset, is there a way that a model can be formed such that these people, those teachers that are being trained, can actually go into various homes and settings and communities and gatherings, you know, and help to understand first and foremost the need by understanding what they need and then offering it on that basis to them? It sounds like a long question, but you know, I just want you
Yes, and I would try, and yes, I would attempt your question. And I think one of the things that COVID-19 has shown to us is, you know, we need to reimagine the education system that we all have been, you know, just embracing and just working with. I think that education definitely goes beyond the math, English, that, you know, and literacy and numeracy. It goes beyond the four walls of school. I think that is what we're starting to see now. And I think that we need to get to a point where education is not only about the teacher and the child, or the teacher and the student. Like, there is a role for parents to play. There's a role for community to play. There's a role for several people to play. And I think we need to start defining what those roles are. And we also need to chart a vision. You know, one of the things that my colleagues and I recently were talking about was, I feel like every region in this country needs to come together to define what the vision they have for their region. Then that vision needs to inform the curriculum, or, you know, how they're teaching their children. And then, you know, that needs to be reflected in then what happens and what ends up with those children at the end of the day. I think one of the mistakes and one of the things that we're yet to do as a country is to define for ourselves the purpose of education. Like, what is the purpose of education for Nigeria? Why are we educating Nigeria? You know, where are we going to in the next 10, 20 years? And I feel like that should be informing the kind of child or the kind of human being and citizen that we want by then. What are the values? What are the skills? What is the knowledge? You know, what is the mindset, the attitude? What are those things that we need? And so based on that, you know, we'll then be informing what should be happening with our curriculum. Based on that, we will determine, Titilayo, I think it was only 4 years ago that history was returned into our curriculum. So if maybe we had a vision, right, and we just didn't decide to take out history, we'll have thought, you know what, we actually need our Nigerian citizens to understand their roots, to understand where they come from, to have that deep knowledge of history. And, you know, we probably would have left that and probably even maybe improved on it and strengthened, you know, how would even teach that. You know, we might have thought, you know what, we're losing values, moral values as a nation. Like, there is this and there is that. Okay, maybe this is how we're going to reinstill that. Maybe parents will have to do this and stuff. Like, I feel like that's something that we have to do. It's a lot of work. And it's one that will require as many stakeholders as possible. It's not one where, you know, people are sitting at Astor Rock and making that decision. It's one that has to, you know, get the ideas, the insight of, you know, parents, community members, educators, different stakeholders really coming together to define, you know, what education for what purpose. And we're really going to keep going, you know, round and round in circles, right? Because, you know, we're not any coherence. Like, there wouldn't be one big vision that everybody in this country is working. And I think that's one thing that we need to do. But I also think that there's a role, there's a place for community. When you look at the Yoruba system, for example, you know, I'm get really interested. And we had a system where, for the fact that you're born into a family, there's already some sort of trade, there's already some sort of profession, there's already something that you will grow. Farmers, and you start to learn the trades.
It's breaking.
The profession. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's glitch. There's a bit of glitch, but I'm just trying to catch
Oh,
on.
okay, okay. Is it much better now? I can maybe try another
Yes,
Wi-Fi.
yes, it is. Okay. It's a long glitch now.
I'm not sure. Titi, can you hear me?
Okay, I think I can hear you now.
Is it much better?
Yes, it's better. It's flowing now.
Okay, so I was saying that there's a role for community and families. I was talking about the Yoruba system, for example, where our trade exists. Every family was known for their trade or their profession. So you have the
Yes,
family of the
yes,
drummers, you have the family of the singers, the family of the farmers, blacksmiths, and
yes,
by just being born into that family, you had a skill that you were going to grow into, that you were going to grow with. You had a profession
yes,
that you were going to mature into and sort of take over. You would learn the secrets of that trade or of that business,
yes,
and then you would carry on with it. And so how do we
yes,
incorporate that? Because one of the things that we've introduced is entrepreneurial studies into our education system. But how do we go back to that system and find a way of reintegrating and reintroducing it back to like the education
yes,
system, so that we're not waiting
yes.
until you get to NYC,
Get into
that's
university.
your National Youth
Yes,
Service Corps, you get to university to then start thinking about that. How can we find a way to bring that back? And that's why when you
yes,
look at the huge unemployment rate, it's because there's something missing. There's something missing there. So
yes,
yes, role for the technical and vocational schools, but then I think there's a
yes,
place for community and families to also support the entire learning process and the education process for their children.
yes. Yes, yes. Okay, so for Teach for Nigeria, one of the visions, as you have said clearly, is to help to address the fundamental issues of the mind towards how they perceive education. What processes do you establish for your cohorts? How do you have them trained? You've said that you train them for about 2 years. In the area of creating content for the curriculum, for the yearly curriculum, do you have that as part of the training for them? I'm going to be talking to somebody who is actually a present teacher, and we'll be sharing how they develop the curriculum, what are the variables and the prerequisites. But with your training programs, how do you infuse the necessary curriculums, and in what way do they express it to their final recipients? Can you hear me?
Titi, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Did you hear me?
Yes, I did. I think I got you, but I just want to
Okay.
be sure that you can hear me. I think there is like a pause, but then, I mean, it's fine. I'm sure
Okay.
we can work with it if you can hear me.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
Did you hear the
so
question?
yes, I did. I did.
Okay. All right.
So we take them through. So we use the Nigerian curriculum. That's what we use. But
Okay.
what we focus excellent teachers. And I know that, a lot of people say yes, but you get fresh graduates, they're novice teachers. Some of them are mature teachers. Some of them have never taught before. How do you expect that after 6 weeks, they're then going to become, excellent? I say that the pre-service training we do, which is a 6-week training program, really supporting them to be day one ready. First, it's challenging. First, being a teacher is a lot of work, like the mental, planning, just thinking about how to engage your students, how to control your classroom, but then being deployed in schools with like difficult environments. So we place our fellows, our teachers, to teach in underserved schools. So these are schools where, some of the classrooms are overcrowded, and, kids probably not having access to furniture. So you can think of, your typical public school. So
Right.
what we work on doing is how do we make them inspiring teachers, 21st century teachers, teachers who are, fostering innovation, creativity in their classroom, teachers who do not have the necessary resources and materials, but they can improvise and, make their classroom fun, engaging. And so if you walk into a Teach for Nigeria classroom, and I'm not sure if Banky W mentioned that to you, but one of the things that you'll see differently from a non-Teach for Nigeria classroom is like the classroom arrangement. So you see that even in this environment, they're able to arrange their classroom in a way that fosters collaboration, teamwork, because in the sort of schools where they work, you have children who, probably are not literate in the language of instruction. So a lot of the children might not be speaking the language or might not be fluent. So a lot of them rely on the support of the other students who are, the high flyers who support their colleagues. And so you see that room in the classroom, you see a lot of chats. You see there's a lot of things that we focus on to say that, when you think about the most inspiring teacher in your life, what was it that person did? And then a lot of role play happens. So during the pre-service, they have to do teaching practice, and they have coaches who support them throughout the 2-year experience, because yes, you might not be a great teacher after 6 weeks, but the coaching and the mentoring gets them there, by the end of the 2-year program. Titi, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm trying to grab as much as I can, even though the pause, the glitches are coming in. I'm just trying to grab as much as I can as you continue. It's not really free flowing, as it is not smooth.
Oh dear! I've just changed the Wi-Fi. I've just changed my connection again. Is it much better?
Yes, it's much better now. It's better. It just comes in. There's a little break, as you continue.
Yeah, there's a delay. Yes, there's a delay.
Yes.
I'm experiencing that too from your end. There's like a delay.
Oh, okay.
But I just wanted to mention that. So the training and support, really allows for us to develop the sort of teachers that we want. So we also have ongoing training. So there's training periodically that happens with the teachers to ensure that we set them up for success. And then we have full-time coaches who do classroom observation, giving them feedback, helping to inform what training happens. And then that way we're able to fully support them to be successful.
Okay, so the mental mindset about teachers you connote the word teachers is quite synonymical with struggle, somebody who's just trying to make a living, which is why the adjective noble is attached. People, when I checked out the word noble in the thesaurus, what I found was something virtuous, something righteous, something good and honorable. Incidentally, for some reason, that has also been synonymized with a fair life, sort of an average sort of thing, and people kind of connote teachers' status with that area of not sufficient, insufficiency, poverty. So why do you think that is? Because I know that teachers in the West, are noble as well, and they do live very well. They live average lives, if not even above, So why do you think that is the case with Nigeria?
So, Titi, I think I got the first part of your question, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and then the video went off, but I think I got the part of your question. And, obviously, the teaching profession could not struggle because of, you know, what happens with teachers. Just an example, some weeks ago, JAM released the cutoff mark, and they had the conversation, you know, about the entry requirements for degrees.
Yeah.
On
I can't hear you.
Titi,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Went off.
Is it back now?
Yes, it's back. Let's go.
Okay,
Let's keep going, please.
Okay, so all you need, I'm sure it's the rain. I apologize. And I've been going in and out of okay, but
it's not your fault.
All you need to score for education
Yes.
is 100. That's 100 over 400. So you just need to score 25%. Of course, everybody, you know, naturally human beings like competition. You want to go for the top.
Yes.
You know, so already there is the, you know, there's a perception about people who go into teaching. It's the program for people, you know, who choose it as an option for last resort, or as a default for not getting into the degree or the program that you want to go into. And so that's one. Now, when you also think about remuneration, teachers are not, I mean, this, especially in this country, you know, teachers are not well paid. So you look at it and you're thinking, okay, if I went and joined a bank, you know, at least I would be getting, you know, some decent package. But you look at the teaching profession, and there's states in this country that are still paying teacher less than 20,000 naira a month. Now you think about, you know, the type of life you want. So even the people are not motivated to wanting to teach and to wanting to go into the profession. I remember when we started this journey, and you know, people said you're never going to find young Nigerians, for that matter, like, you know, young Nigerians, we want immediate gratification. You know, everybody wants to get a job, and immediately you want to be able to buy the latest iPhone and MacBook and all these other gadgets and things and car and what have you. Nobody's going to give 2 years of their life. You want bright minds, promising graduates, you know, people who could also get into other jobs that if they wanted to, and you want them to come and teach for 2 years, not to volunteer as a full-time teacher. You know, forget about it, you will not find them. But you know what? I think my conviction for this work grew in 2017. And we're looking to recruit 60 individuals to start this program, where we're going to place them to teach in public schools in Ogun State and in Lagos State. And we received over 12,000 applications, 12,009 applications. Now, it was after the conversations that I was having with the different individuals who were applying, people who were truly applying because they wanted to make a difference. Because for a long time, they hadn't found a platform that allowed for them to give back, that allowed for them to live a life that was beyond themselves. And the conversations that I was having, it was just unbelievable that these were young Nigerians who were equally saying, you know what, I'm tired of the narrative, I'm tired of complaining, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and work and do something to change this narrative. And we found young people who applied, 12,000 of them plus applied to it. You know, and we've always, and throughout them, we've continued to see the numbers rise and increase, and many more people showing up and stepping up to say, you know, I want to serve, and I want to, you know, ensure that I'm able to make an impact and change, you know, one child's life, or change, you know, children in a classroom's life. And, you know, that for me is where the answer lies. It's to say, there are lots of young Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians who are ready to make a difference, a lot of people who are tired of the narrative. And yes, the teaching profession might look like a struggle, but you know what? They're making it so cool. They're making it, you know, like the new thing. They're living their best lives. They're having even more opportunities after the 2-year experience. You know, so, and I think also, it's also the way that, you know, the way that teaching has been sort of presented or packaged. Like there's several, if you're a teacher and if you've taught in a classroom, I tell you, you can work anywhere. You can manage any, I mean, you're dealing with some of the most problematic children. You're going to like have to manage them, engage them. You're going to have to ensure they learn. You're going to deal with other colleagues in the school, other teachers, head teachers.
Yes.
If you're teaching a public school, you're going to improvise, you're going to problem solve, you're going to negotiate. Like all of these skills and expertise you need think about any managerial role that you have to be in. And, so I think also just helping teachers recognize their own capabilities and their abilities and all that they carry. And even the planning that they go back home every day and they have to plan their lessons and they have to plan it thinking about every child in the classroom. Like every child has different learning styles. You're thinking about this child's needs. You're thinking about, what would make them excited? How do I ensure that I don't, talk for too long and I'm able to, make the classroom energetic? Like you're doing all that planning, strategic planning, thinking. And those are skills, that anyone who works, whether you're working in consulting, whether you're working at whatever level, you need those skills as well. And I think it's about time to just really get teachers to tell their own stories. Get teachers to, to see that, yes, they might be living through these experiences, but these are the skills that you possess and these are the expertise, and I think it's definitely one of the things that, our program is doing, because teaching now looks cool. Everyone wants to.
So that's where I was going, that, you present this profession in a different light. It's just that just as much as what you can do as an organization, because all of it requires funding, clearly. Your process, your selection process, when you had over 20,000 interest in this program, your process because we could also start to interrogate their reasons for applying, for being there. Some of them probably just want to have something to do, make some money or get paid, and I think that from the perspective of the passion to be able to teach, you must innately have a passion to impart knowledge. That's why you will find some people are teachers and they're not driven by that profession. They're not particularly interested in making any difference. They can't even understand how to engage children, because the motive behind it is totally different. So the selection process, how were you able to see through and choose and select the ones that you did for the program?
So we have a rigorous selection process, and it starts with an online application, and then you get to a point where you take an online test, and then you move on to a point where you come into, so before COVID-19, it was an in-person full day assessment center where we're checking for, how you work together with like other colleagues. We're looking at a teaching simulation. So you have to teach a subject, to pretend a classroom so that you have a group of people sitting, you have to do that. Then you also have to do a one-on-one interview where we're actually trying to get to know you, because you could say all the things that you want online, you could pass that test, but there's that final one that happens with a group of assessors, who do that. But one of the things that I say is, if you come to Teach for Nigeria because you don't have a job, yes, it offers you a job, but the people who come through that experience, you go through that rigor of selection, you end up at the Training Institute. The Training Institute is a 6 weeks program. It's residential. It is intensive. We have people at the Institute who say, you know what, I wanted a job, but I didn't sign up for this sort of rigor. And so the people who do not want, majority of the ones who, maybe we've had cases where maybe 2%, fall out from the Institute. But you see the ones who progress and go on to the schools, you can't do that sort of job because you're just looking for a job. If you don't have the passion, the commitment, you're going to fall through. You're just going to leave it. And I'm going to share an example of why I say this. So I went one day to visit, he's now an alumnus, but I went one day to visit a school in Abeokuta. And it was during the rainy season. And the Jide is the name of the fellow then who I went to visit. And I got into his classroom, and only half of the classroom was being utilized. And he was still teaching and engaging his students. You know why? Because half of the room was literally like it was raining in the classroom. Like it was as good as being outside, because the ceiling was leaking, everything was open, but
It was
only
all
one
broken.
side of the room could have been used. And Jide was there teaching. He didn't know I was coming to the school. And I just walked into his classroom. And with half of the room wet, his kids were still being engaged. They were learning. And so you imagine that, like you leave, and Jide was one of the fellows who left and on air. He used to work with the radio station and applied to the Teach for Nigeria program. And then he was teaching. You know what? Like, it will get to a point where a human being will say, I didn't sign up for this and I'm not going to do this.
Yes.
But when you hear the conversations and you hear the things they say, I'm not going to leave my children. Like, there's some of them who were not maybe staying in the community before, but because they started teaching in the community, they built relationships, they built connection with the children.
Yes.
They then say, now, you know what?
Yes.
I'm not going to leave this community because I can't afford to leave these children. I don't know what will become of them when I leave. So you know what? I'm going to stay back here to ensure that I'm still in their
Keep
lives
it all
one
like
way or
that.
the other. And so these are the people that we're looking for. And these are the outstanding people. Like, they're not it's not just about finding a job. It's much more than a job. It's a calling, as we like to say, you know, and it's a calling to act. It's a calling to make a difference. It's a calling to, you know, change lives. And that's what this is.
Yes. So Teach for Nigeria has an absolutely fantastic, phenomenal program. And you're just able to reach a couple of people. Now, in the area of sustaining and passing this knowledge as far as possible, what plans do you have?
One of the things that we have been doing as an organization is just thinking, like, we recognize just how complex and how, you know, how much work, like the intensity of the work that we're doing. And so recently, you know, we started having conversations about, yes, we can get all of these bright minds and, you know, channel their energy to working in the education ecosystem and transforming system. But at the same time, we need the people who are within the system to equally exhibit the same level of leadership and mindset and attitude and commitment and drive. And so what do we do? One of the things that we decided to start doing in 2018 was to also start recruiting existing public school teachers into our program. And then they go through the same selection process. They go through the same training rigor. And the idea is, how do we get as many of them to also join the movement? You know, one of the things that I've learned, Titi, I've seen that because of the teachers that we've also had come into the fellowship, I've seen how they're even able to catalyze the transformation to their other teacher colleagues even more.
Yes.
Because you hear conversations like, Mrs. Odedeji, how are you doing? So, you know, you just went for one training for a few weeks and you're back with all these styles and you are doing this one and you're doing student affirmation and you're doing student vision. But we weren't doing this before. Please come and teach me. And there's that interest. There's, you know, they want to learn, they want to do better. And we're seeing how they're even catalyzing the change, you know, much faster in their school ecosystem, you know, than our fellows that we're introducing. So it's saying, how can we get as many more existing teachers to join the program? Something very exciting happened this year. We got a partnership with a Spanish foundation called Profuturo Foundation. And this foundation was interested in having us train as many public school teachers in the schools that we're working in as possible. 12,000 of them, actually. But before then, we started having conversation with some of the state government, some of the government officials in the states that we're working in, where they were saying to us, how can we get, you know, this sort of conversation where they're like, how can we get the DNA of your fellows in our teachers? You know, what can you do for us to help with training? And, you know, I always have, you know, say to them, we don't have the capacity to do that. That's not what we're set up for. We're not a training institution, you know, all of that. But we were having that conversation. Then as the universe will have it, Profuturo came. And this year we're looking at cascading some of those elements, some of those DNA, some of those experiences to 12,000 teachers through our fellows. That is going to start this month. And we're going to have as many more teachers, you know, have that mindset, have the attitude, have the commitment, take that sense of responsibility to say, you know what, I will take ownership of this challenge and I will find a way to solve and to address these issues that I'm identifying. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm hoping that is not going to be a one-off program. I'm
Yes,
hoping
it will
that's
be
something
a
that we'll continue to
continuous.
do.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Are you working with the ministries? I know that you work with Lagos, but what capacity are you working with the ministries of education?
So we cannot do this work without the ministry. We can't have access to the schools without the Ministry of Education and all the other agencies, relevant in the education space in the state. So our partnership is, and our agreement, we have agreements signed with the states that we're working with. And the agreement goes beyond even just giving us access to their schools to place teachers to teach. But it's also one where they're committing funding, financial resources. So all the states that we're working in also contribute towards the stipend and allowances of our fellows. So I can tell you that, the states are not only opening up their schools, we have agreements with them, but they're also committed to this movement and this vision of ours.
And these are targeted towards the public schools, I presume.
Exactly, yes, the public schools.
Okay. Which of the states are you working with right now? And do you plan to spread across Nigeria?
Currently, we're in Ogun State and we're in Kaduna State. In Lagos State, we're in the low-cost private schools, but we're in the final stages of signing partnership with the Lagos State government as well. Our goal really is to develop as many of the leaders as possible, who can then go on spreading this work, spreading this mission, this vision across Nigeria. The truth, it would be great, like if we had the resources to do it, and it's not just the financial resources, but it's also the manpower, like all of those resources to scale and expand this, great. But right now we're focusing on going deep. Like, how do we support our alumni network, who are graduating and leaving our program, coming up with all the incredible innovations and solutions to continue to expand their work and to continue to strengthen the work that they've now committed their lives to? How do we get to a place? Imagine Kayode's School Linker program, for example. Imagine if that could spread throughout Nigeria, where he's training as many in-service public school teachers as possible. Imagine the sanitary bank initiative. Imagine us investing in that and supporting the fellow to scale that across as many public schools, as possible. There's another chap who is working on ICT hubs, where he trains children in low-income communities on coding, robotics, digital literacy. And just imagine if we're able to, support him to scale that as well. So for us, it's like, yes, there's a 2-year fellowship program, right? There's also the interest to go and spread and expand across all the different states. But then we have all these soldiers that we're also investing in. We have this army of people who also now have the understanding of the issues. They have solutions they're working on. How do we equally support them to scale all of that? And that's the approach that we're working with. And one of the things that I say is, we're not just going to up and leave and go into a state. I think there needs to be the right leadership that is keen to have Teach for Nigeria come. I've only seen this work because of the support we get from governments, the support to navigate the bureaucracy, the support to map and engage stakeholders.
Yes, I agree that, but you're starting from somewhere, and it's baby steps. And, when you start to effectively touch and engage the people or the government in the states, and they see the effects, the ripple effects on the products that they churn out, then there's a very high possibility that the other states will also want to replicate, and they will invite you in. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people, a lot of platforms like yours as well. Like somebody's asking here, is there a way you're willing to involve private school educators in Lagos? Somebody has also asked, is there a way that I can join, or how can I participate, or how can I be part of this program? How can I be part of this platform? So, we're going to be running out of our time very soon. But I definitely want us to continue the conversation so that we can put it on our platform in the ways that people can join in and support you, and also spread this activity, spread the word as well. More than anything, I want to sit with what it is that you're doing with Teach for Nigeria. I want to be able to provide that opportunity for you to push out the word and let people understand that we're not there, but we're working, and you're beginning to develop the minds of people. We don't wait till who is going to be going through to teacher training school. Okay, so you have the website right there. You guys can look at it and check it out and do your research. Folawe, I want to thank you so much. We're going to